Tonight, amongst all the great playoff baseball, you saw Major League Baseball honoring one of its great stars of all time, and that was Roberto Clemente.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm yours, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app, and download that app today. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best way to get a hold of me is right here on the YouTube page. And leave that hashtag everyday Sully. It helps us find your comments when you want to say something. And hey, I want to address one thing before I get going on today's show. I got a lot of stuff I wanted to talk about, but I got one of my YouTube commenters pointed out something to me. Where was it? It's Alec Forsyth 5459 said, "Can you find someone to pay who knows what he's talking about?" And he said, "This guy," meaning me, said the Astros and Mariners are battling the AL East, and the Braves swept the Astros. Get your basic info accurate. Come on now. Hey, Alec Forsyth, you're 100% correct. Sometimes I talk. Sometimes my brain works faster than my mouth. I did make a mistake there the other day. I obviously meant to say the AL West. And on the top of today's show, I meant to say playoff chase instead of playoff baseball, playoff chase baseball. And sometimes I talk a little fast there. I apologize, Alec Forsyth. Yes, I can be somewhat of a dumbbell from time to time. Let's get to the trivia question. The trivia question I had the other day was, where is it right now? What future Hall of Famer hit the first postseason home run for the Yankees in the wild card era? They went a long stretch where they didn't play in the postseason, 1981 to 1995, long for the Yankees. And let's see, Joshua Ankiel, 7643 says, my trivia guess is Don Mattingly. I think 95 was the only time he saw the postseason. That was 95. That was his only time in the postseason because the 94 postseason was wiped away. He did hit a home run. It was not the first home run in that series, and he's also not a Hall of Famer. So there are a lot of things not correct about that. Amos the Worker says Bucky Dent too soon. Come on, man. Come on. You really think Bucky Dent's in the Hall of Fame? But Big John 08865 said Wade Boggs. And yes, I've had back-to-back days where I put up a trivia question about a postseason home run where the answer was Wade Boggs. Wade Boggs hit the only home run in the 1990 American League Championship Series, and Wade Boggs was the first Yankee to hit a postseason home run in the wild card era. You don't think of him as a home run hitter? I bet a lot of you don't think of him as a Yankee, but he won his lone ring with the Yankees, and he has a phenomenal comedy television resume. That's right. Wade Boggs has been on Cheers. Wade Boggs was on The Simpsons. And Wade Boggs was on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Three of my favorite comedy shows of all time have featured Wade Boggs. There you go. Today was Roberto Clemente Day. And you saw it wasn't celebrated the way that Jackie Robinson Day is, where everyone wears number 42. But several players wore 21 in honor of the great Clemente. And he is a remarkable figure in the history of baseball. Now, if you just want to look at him as a player, Roberto Clemente had an unbelievable career. He played 18 years in the major leagues. And it's funny, I've always read about Clemente, and I kept hearing about how he was always injured, and he was always having, he was always suffering from injuries. And you look, he played from 1955 to 1972, and he played 100 games each one of those years. There's no one season where he played like 20 games because of an injury. A couple of times, like 59, he only played 105 games, 108 games in 1970, 102 in his final year. So, yeah, he did have injuries, but it's not like it took him out giant chunks of the year, he often played 155 to 145 to 155 games. So I guess we had different definitions of injury prone back then. If you just want to look at stats, he got his 3,000 hits. He was a batting champion 4 times back when people cared about that. He got, he was never a big stolen base guy, but he got tons of triples. He was never a big home run guy, but he did wind up hitting 240 home runs with his 3,000 hits. He had a career batting average of 317, career OPS of 834, and was considered to be the greatest defensive outfielder of his era, and is always in the short list of people when they talk about the greatest defensive outfielders of all time. He won the National League Most Valuable Player in 1966. He led the league in WAR in 1968, but no one knew it. And he did so in the greatest pitchers era of all time. This is when you had the Koufaxes and the Drysdales and the Jim Bunnings and the Gaylord Perrys and the Bob Gibsons and the Juan Marichals. All these great pitchers towards the end of his career was the Tom Seavers. I mean, they were all playing during that period of time, an era when Carl Yastrzemski led the American League with a 301 average, and he was putting up these great numbers. I always put the great hitters of that era up on a higher pedestal than, say, those who played in the Royds era, just like the pitchers who were great in the Royds era, like the Schillings and the Pedros and the Maddoxes and the Randy Johnsons and the Tom Glavines and the Mike Mussinas of the world. I put them up on a slightly higher pedestal because they were playing, against Lou Ferrigno. He got his final regular season hit, which was hit number 3,000. And he wound up being the MVP of the 1971 World Series, which was his second championship he won. And he finished his career. His final game was in the 1972 NLCS, the greatest postseason of all time. And he was on the field when the Pirates lost the NLCS. So just as a player, he was someone who had a Hall of Fame career. As a human being, he was extraordinary. As a human being, he lived the kind of life and died the kind of death that we should celebrate, which may sound like a strange concept. But trust me, we talk about him a little bit. He is a man we need to celebrate, whose legacy needs to continue. And it's important to keep him alive in terms of our memories, in terms of our thoughts, because do you know what? He still matters. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. There's so many products out there, it's hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything. That's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. And it's not just hype. This is a supplement clinically tested that targets the root cause of thinning and shedding with a proactive approach. Do you know what? Nutrafol is the perfect solution for your lifestyle, no matter what. Whether you're at work or whether you're out with friends or you're just getting ready for the morning, Nutrafol gives you more confidence in your daily routine. And it's simple to add to your day. 4 pills with a meal, no prescription needed, and it's easy. And you can feel good knowing about it because Nutrafol is NSF certified and backed by peer-reviewed studies. See thicker, stronger hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering Locked On MLB listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Now, let me tell you something. I love going to baseball games. I've been to many this year, including down the street at Dodger Stadium. I went to Oracle Park in San Francisco, and I went to Sutter Health Park to see the Sacramento A's, your Sacramento A's, play. That's right. I've been to Sacktown to see a Major League Baseball game. And no matter where you are, a playoff game at Dodger Stadium or the A's trying to put together a crowd in Sacktown, the energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person, it's fabulous. But actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. You got the lines, the login screens, the surprise fees, kind of take some of the fun out of it. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives you the advantage back to the fans Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You will always get 100% authentic tickets. Authentic ticket. We're doing it live, folks. Delivered on time at the best price, plus all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. And you know what? It makes it super simple. You get to see the seat. You get to be able to do the little pan and scan. All right, that's a good view right there, and the fees are included. You know your total up front, no surprise fees. And you know what? Sometimes you like to have the zone deals where you pick the section, and Gametime picks the seats, and you save big. It's honestly, it's faster, it's cheaper, and it's less stressful than any other way I bought tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKODOMO. This is what that guy was talking about. LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Download Gametime today. Like I said, sometimes my brain is going faster than my mouth. If you have never read this is, and I get no kickback, I get no points here. This is the book, Clemente, The Passion and Grace of Baseball's Last Hero by David Moranis. This is one of the best baseball books I've read, and I've read literally hundreds of baseball books. This is the definitive biography on the great Roberto Clemente, and it shows not just he was a tremendous player, and not just that he was a man we should, admire, but someone who was a true role model and a flawed man. This does not portray someone walking on water. This portrays a human being with some of the shortcomings that we all have, which in many ways makes him more heroic. Now, Roberto Clemente was born in Puerto Rico in 1934, and he worked his way into a contract with the Brooklyn Dodgers. Now, here's the deal. Some of the same cast of characters in the discovery of Jackie Robinson as a hero for the Brooklyn Dodgers take place in the story of Roberto Clemente, because he was signed by the Brooklyn Dodgers, and there was a great purging of some of the front office talent in Brooklyn, including Branch Rickey, who collided with the O'Malleys, and Clyde Sukeforth, who was a scout who discovered Jackie Robinson and was actually Jackie Robinson's first manager after Leo DeRocher was suspended. And the Brooklyn Dodgers were basically trying to hide Roberto Clemente in their farm system. Back then, you could, the Rule 5 draft, where you could draft players from other people's organizations if they were exposed and not part of the major league roster, was a kind of easy thing to do back then. And there was a lot of great players on the Dodgers organizations. They were winning pennants left and right. And they had this prospect from Puerto Rico who they were trying to make sure no one saw play. Unfortunately, with the brain trust of the Dodgers going over to the Pirates, they said, hey, we already know about him. And the Pirates swiped him. That's right. Roberto Clemente could have been a Dodger star, but he became a star for the Pittsburgh Pirates, who were a team that was really, really bad for a long time. And then the arrival of Clemente, and suddenly they got to be pretty dang good. Now, Clemente faced a lot of the same racism that people with dark skin, had in the 1950s, but he also had the added disadvantage of not speaking English, or English being his second language. And that added to the way he was, to the negative way he was portrayed in the press. At the time, the writers were kind of, how do I say this gently, would make fun of him for his accent and his butchering of the English language. His teammate Bill Mazeroski, a fellow Hall of Famer, pointed out that those writers couldn't speak 2 words of Spanish, and Roberto Clemente was saying complete sentences in English, but they were making fun of him because his syntax was not always correct. And what they would do often is they would write his interviews phonetically. And if he had any, if he mispronounced something, they would, write out his mispronunciation. There was a big movement to make his name Bobby Clemente or Bob Clemente. His baseball cards from Topps were listed as Bob Clemente. The press called him Bob or Bobby. Some people, because his full name was Roberto Enrique Clemente Walker, some people try to say his name should be Bobby Walker. But instead, he was a proud man. He was proud of his Puerto Rican heritage. He wasn't going to anglify his name. He wasn't necessarily going to cooperate with the press and play their games. Instead, he was going to let his play speak for itself. And in many ways, the press never really got on his side and called him a hypochondriac and made fun of his syntax. And because he was grumpy with the press, they made him a villain. But as it turned out, it got to the point where people couldn't ignore him anymore. When he won the MVP in 1966 and finally turned the 1971 World Series into a showcase of his talents. But he was more than that. It was more than just surviving his own the trials and tribulations. It's that he used his fame and the fact that he was proud to be Puerto Rican, proud to be Latino, proud to be dark-skinned, is he turned that spotlight on the disadvantaged youth of Puerto Rico. You know what? When someone dies at a young age, in their 30s, and you point out they have a wife and kids and everything like that, that's always something that's sad. But when they live a life that's there to make the other people around them better and have them rise up with them, that's even more tragic, in my opinion. The life that you led, the life that Roberto Clemente led, is as much as something to celebrate as how he died. Some of his quotes include, "The biggest thing I want to do is for the kids," meaning the academy that he wanted to build in Puerto Rico, to give the kids in Puerto Rico the advantages that he did not have. He gave tremendously to charity and was always there for Puerto Rico and to make sure the people of Puerto Rico felt proud of who they were instead of ashamed. That they feel like outsiders if you come to a blue-collar town like Pittsburgh, who took a while to figure out that their best player was a dark-skinned man from Puerto Rico who was being portrayed as being a dummy until people realized, oh my God, his baseball IQ was off the charts. Danny Murtaugh, his manager for both of the World Series championship teams he was on, was basically grooming Clemente to be the next manager because he knew this man was a baseball genius and thought 3 steps ahead of everybody else. You don't know how he died. Clemente played a lot of winter baseball and managed winter baseball. And he often managed the Puerto Rican team in many of the winter series, the Caribbean series, the Amateur World Series, and whatnot. And he played a lot of games managed a lot of games with Puerto Rico in Nicaragua. In 1972, there was a huge earthquake in Nicaragua. And a lot of the relief supplies that were coming into Nicaragua were being stolen or put on the black market. And Clemente heard about that. And on New Year's Eve, 1972, he boarded a supply plane to fly from Puerto Rico to Nicaragua because he knew that he was so beloved in Latin America, Central America, South, every Latin country, that Clemente was their man, their hero, their superstar, the man who gave his World Series MVP acceptance speech in Spanish, would not change his name to Bobby, did not shy away from the language barrier, did not shy away from his heritage, did not anglify himself to appease other people, but instead made other people realize how great he was and accept him. They knew that if they saw Clemente on that plane, he had such respect. And if you ever saw him, he was just this imposing figure. this imposing physical figure, strikingly handsome, and with this look of complete seriousness in his face. He was so beloved that he knew that no one would be stealing anything with him supervising it. On New Year's Eve, as a celebrity, could have been partying, could have been going out with other celebrities and living it up. He spent his New Year's Eve on a plane, bringing supplies to a country that he was not from. He was from Puerto Rico, part of the United States, and he was taken to Nicaragua, not even his native country. Fortunately, the plane was overstuffed. It was too heavy and crashed in the Gulf of Mexico. His body was never found. And when the Pirates had their memorial service for Clemente in Puerto Rico, all of his teammates were there except for his best friend Manny Sanguin, the Panamanian superstar catcher for the Pirates. He did not go. He was on a boat because he was with several other people who were going into the Gulf of Mexico to find him because he didn't accept the fact that he was gone. This was a man who used his fame, used his stardom, used his clout to make the world a better place. That's who he was. This is the type of man he was. And you should be able to quote a man after they're gone and realize what kind of person they were. This is my favorite Roberto Clemente quote. Anytime you have an opportunity to make a difference in the world and you don't, then you're wasting your time on earth. And let me tell you, I am very, very glad that baseball is using their time to honor this legit hero. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, FanDuel is the best way to make your bets because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, playing a same-game parlay, or even jumping in line as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. All right, let's talk about some stuff that's happening today. A lot of Jays fans are in the chat here, and this was, let's just go with my favorite. Let's see, Brandon Lee says, Treya Savage Day. Yeah, let's hear it for Treya Savage. Am I saying his name correctly? Forgive me. This is the first time I've ever said his name out loud. But the Toronto Blue Jays, who have had lots of pitching issues, they didn't have any pitching issues tonight. Treya Savage made his big league debut and struck out 9 Rays in 5 innings. And the bullpen, Little, Dominguez, Varland, Hoffman, and especially Fisher, who struck out 4 batters in 2 innings. Suddenly the Blue Jays bullpen and pitching staff looks pretty solid right now. And you couple that with the fact that the Yankees got clobbered by the Minnesota Twins, and it was one of those situations of, hey, they just finished the gauntlet, that tough part of the season, and now they got lost 7-0 to the Minnesota Twins. Well, guess what? With that, the Toronto Blue Jays have inched a little bit closer to clinching the American League East. As of this recording, they're 5 games ahead of the Yankees, but don't kid yourself. They're actually 6 games ahead of the Yankees because if those 2 teams finish tied, guess what? The tiebreaker is going to Toronto. Toronto Walker, CA, which I assume means Canada, California. Magic number for Toronto is now 4. I believe that's for clinching a postseason spot, not for clinching the AL East. But it's looking better and better for them. And it was a tough loss for the Texas Rangers today, who were doubled up by the Houston Astros. That Astros one was a big win for them. They now have a 3-game lead over Cleveland and Texas. And, it was a back and forth game. It was actually closer than the 6-3 final had. But can I just tell you something? The Astros were wearing an alternate uniform that said Stros with a star on it, and they had a hat with the white front on there. Those hats are great. Those uniforms are great. Those should be their permanent uniforms. At least wear them for a while. I would love them to go back to the Tequila Sunrise orange, the orange uniforms they used to wear in the 70s and the 80s. But those uniforms we're wearing today were pretty terrific. And you know what? I'm in. I'm absolutely in on them. So there you go. By the way, the Pirates were shut out by the Cubs 4-0 today. And Keller got a strikeout with the bases loaded in the bottom of the ninth. And I thought, wow, the Pirates are going to get a grand slam to tie the game on Roberto Clemente Day. Nope, no, not going to happen. Not going to happen. But I said the Blue Jays pitching was terrific in a 2-1 game with the Rays. The Astros looked great. The Cincinnati Reds won a game, so they're now still in the playoff hunt. And some games are still going on. Right now, the Diamondbacks are clobbering the Giants as I record this. And have you noticed that the Diamondbacks are sneaking back into this? Am I the only one who noticed that? That the D-backs, if they win this game tonight, and they're up 7-1 on San Francisco, will leapfrog the Giants and be only a game and a half behind the Mets? Am I the only one who noticed that? That there'll be 2 games back in the loss column? And it's not like the Diamondbacks have been playing like the 2007 Colorado Rockies in Rocktober. I mean, they won 6 of their last 10 games, but they're finding the way to win. And they're a 500 team. So there you have it there. And there you go. So, and there's some other games still going on right now, but the major intriguing game to me was the fact that the Blue Jays can pitch again. And that means they're dangerous. And you know what? I kept thinking about the fact that Savage looked really great in this game. And I was thinking of Francisco Rodriguez when he came up with the Angels in 2002, and he had only made a handful of appearances in that regular season, and nobody had a scouting report on him. And for the first, through the division series with the Yankees and the ALCS with the Angels and the first couple of games of the World Series with the Giants, he looked absolutely unhittable because no one knew who he was. And then Barry Bonds hit a home run off of him that I have no evidence landed. But if the Blue Jays are going to put together that Rubik's Cube of pitchers to go far in the postseason, I've heard of worse strategies than putting on a guy that no one's seen before. It wasn't that long ago that the Blue Jays bullpen was going to be their bugaboo. And by the way, thank you, someone, I forget who it was, who noticed my Bugaloo reference the other day. And thank you for making Locked On MLB your first listen every day. If you're a second listen, check out the Locked On MLB Game Night, every game, every night, until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on the national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And let's go to the trivia question. And the trivia question, we're going to go back to Roberto Clemente, who won just a string of Golden Gloves and until his death in 1972. What right fielder won the 1973 Gold Glove the year after the death of Roberto Clemente? That is a trivia question. And I want to just bring up one last thing about Clemente and why I think it's important we keep his legacy alive. I'm 53 years old. I was born the year Clemente died. I have no memory of him playing. My earliest memories of baseball involved the great Pirate team. You see that right behind me, the 79 Pirates. And I remember during that World Series, them mentioning Roberto Clemente. He was already a legendary figure by the time I started following baseball. But if the memories of Clemente, if you use the rule of 7, meaning you don't really form your first baseball memories until you're 7 years old, anyone under the age of 60 has no memories of Clemente as a player. And he lived the type of life and had the type of legacy and had the sort of reach and importance that goes beyond the baseball field. It crosses cultures, it crosses languages, it crosses colors, and it crosses, well, entire cultures of people. Blue-collar Pittsburgh and San Juan, Puerto Rico are two very different places, and yet they have that connective tissue. Pittsburgh is a great sports town, and if you're going to list the great figures in Pittsburgh sports history, it's probably Terry Bradshaw and Roberto Clemente on top. And it says a lot. We need to keep the legacy of the people who made not just the game better, but our whole society better, so that their deeds live on beyond the death. And we never found Clemente's body, but we've never lost his importance. And please read this book and thank me later. Talking about Roberto Clemente and why we need to keep honoring him, and some fabulous games being played today. And let's face it, some nice threads worn by the Astros. This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.